Family of Aubrey Richardson demands justice and transparency in investigation of fatal shooting. iNews Guyana reports, relatives of 61-year-old Aubrey Richardson, who was fatally shot during a robbery at Sadie's shop in Yarrowcabra on August 24, 2024, are calling for justice and expressing deep mistrust in the police's handling of the investigation. Richardson, a well-known resident of Kururu village on the Soesdijk-Linden Highway, succumbed to his injuries days after the shooting, and his family fears those responsible for his death may never be held accountable. Richardson's daughter, Felicia Adams, recounted the events of that tragic night, stating that her father had left home with a friend to visit the shop but never returned. She found the circumstances of his visit suspicious, noting, "They were in the shop and went to buy dal puri for the next day, which sounds strange, because my dad doesn't eat stuff with peas because he suffered from burned stomach." Adams explained that according to Richardson's friend, a man had entered the shop, purchased cigarettes, and left, only to return moments later, ordering everyone not to move. As Richardson turned to see who it was, he was pushed and subsequently shot in the back. By the time he could catch his balance, he was shot. He was in ICU and died like 2 weeks after, she shared. Adams detailed that her father had been left bleeding on the ground for a significant period before anyone responded to his calls for help. The family eventually rushed him to the hospital in his own bus, picking up his son en route. Despite their efforts, Richardson's injuries were fatal. A post-mortem revealed that Richardson died from septic shock caused by gunshot wounds. However, Adams claims that the family later discovered multiple gunshot wounds, which raises suspicions about the true nature of the incident. The family's concerns extend beyond the circumstances of the shooting. Adams has accused the police of lacking transparency and believes that a possible cover-up is underway, alleging that individuals involved in the crime were known to the shop owners. While at the hospital, my mom overheard them, the shop owners, saying that one of the men's names was Cartoon. We believe this was a deliberate act, Adams said. She further alleged that the police investigation is being deliberately delayed, claiming, "The police have not been telling us anything. They are not being transparent with us. When we try to speak to them, some of them, especially the commander, are very dismissive." Adams also mentioned receiving information about a potential bribe being passed, suggesting that the suspects are relatives of the shop owners. The family is calling for a thorough and transparent investigation into Richardson's death, urging the authorities to explore every lead and ensure justice is served. "We believe there is more to my father's death than just a robbery gone wrong," Adams emphasized. "We are asking the authorities to take this case seriously and to ensure that those responsible are brought to justice." Kelvin Bates remanded to prison for robbery under arms. Kelvin Bates, 27, of New Market Street, Rose Hall Town, has been remanded to prison following charges of robbery under arms committed against Mohammed Hussein, a 29-year-old Albion estate operator and resident of Kilcoy/Chesney housing scheme. Bates was apprehended on Monday and made his first court appearance at the New Amsterdam Magistrates Court on Thursday. He was not required to enter a plea and was subsequently remanded to prison. According to the facts presented in court, the incident occurred at approximately 3:40 a.m. while Hussein was on his way home from work on his motorcycle. Hussein recounted, "I noticed the light behind me. Then all of a sudden, the motorcycle pulled alongside me with 2 males on it and they asked me what was going on, and I said nothing. The one at the back of the motorcycle had on a full-face helmet, and he gave me a shove, causing me to fall off the motorcycle. After forcing Hussein off his motorcycle, the assailants pointed a gun at him and demanded the keys to his vehicle. Despite wearing a helmet, Hussein was struck on the head with the gun. The assailants eventually fled with his motorcycle, a cell phone valued at $45,000, and $6,000 in cash. Hussein was left shaken but managed to avoid serious injury thanks to the protection of his helmet. Bates remains in custody pending further legal proceedings. The case highlights the continued challenges of armed robberies in the area and the importance of community vigilance. Law enforcement urges anyone with additional information related to the case to come forward. Opposition leader Aubrey Norton insists on new voters list and biometric system for 2025 elections. News source Guyana reports, Opposition leader Aubrey Norton has reaffirmed his call for a new voters list and the implementation of biometric technology for the 2025 general elections. He argues that these measures are critical for ensuring transparency and integrity in the electoral process. Speaking at a press conference today, Mr. Norton emphasized the need for a comprehensive overhaul of the current National Register of Registrants database, expressing concerns about the accuracy and size of the existing voters list, which he described as bloated. He insisted that a new list, along with the use of biometric technology, is essential for ensuring fair and credible elections in Guyana. We are continuing the work for a proper voters list, Mr. Norton stated. I am aware that shortly, there will be some intense discussions on the question of biometrics and a clean voters list. Our commissioners at GCOM are briefed and will be taking their position on that. I do not believe that the current voters list can be used as a basis for anything. The voters list, which currently contains more than 700,000 names, has drawn criticism from the opposition, as it approaches the size of Guyana's total population. Mr. Norton argues that a more realistic figure would be around 600,000 registered voters, and he questioned whether the Guyana Elections Commission, GCOM, could administer an election that accurately reflects the democratic will of the people without addressing the list's alleged discrepancies. This call for change comes despite Vice President Barrett Jagdeo's recent dismissal of the opposition's demand for a new voters list, deeming it unnecessary. However, the opposition remains adamant that without a revamped list and the use of biometrics, there is a risk of issues arising during the 2025 elections. Mr. Norton's stance is bolstered by previous reports from several international observer missions, including those from the European Union, CARICOM, and the Carter Center. Their observations from past elections highlighted the need for GCOM to cleanse the voters list as a part of improving electoral transparency. As the 2025 elections draw nearer, Mr. Norton emphasized that a Partnership for National Unity and Alliance for Change, APNU plus AFC, will continue advocating for these changes, seeking to ensure that all stakeholders' concerns are addressed before voters head to the polls. Businessman Amir Ahmad demands retraction and apology from Rickford Burke over defamation claims. Prominent businessman Amir Ahmad, managing director of the Sheriff Group of Companies, has issued a formal demand for a public retraction and apology from New York-based political commentator Rickford Burke. This legal action arises from claims that Burke made in 2 recent Facebook posts, which Ahmad's legal team says are defamatory and damaging to his reputation. In a letter dated October 16, 2024, Ahmad's attorneys, Sanjeev Dindon and Khalif Gaban of Whitworth Chambers, outlined the grievances regarding Burke's posts. The first post, published on October 14, 2024, alleged that Guyana's police commissioner had accepted $8.5 million from the owner of a company under investigation by U.S. authorities. The second post, dated October 16, 2024, claimed that the Special Organized Crime Unit, SOCU, of Guyana had recommended criminal charges against Ahmad, Police Commissioner Clifton Hicken, and Assistant Commissioner Calvin Brutus, among others, in connection to various police scandals. Ahmad's legal team has contended that these accusations, which imply involvement in terrorism and financial crimes, are entirely false and defamatory. The letter emphasized that the posts suggest Ahmad is under investigation by U.S. law enforcement and that criminal charges have been recommended against him by Guyana's Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, in a money laundering probe. The publications and remarks mentioned above in relation to my client are wholly false and defamatory, the letter states. The letter, which was addressed to Burke at his New York residence and shared on Facebook, demands an immediate retraction of the statements and a public apology. Ahmad's attorneys have specified that the terms of the apology must be pre-approved by Ahmad and his legal team prior to its publication. Additionally, the letter warns that Ahmad reserves the right to seek substantial damages for harm to his reputation and legal costs incurred. Should Burke fail to comply with the demands, Ahmad has indicated his intention to proceed with a defamation lawsuit. The letter also mentioned that any response from Burke would be presented in court if the matter proceeds to trial. Randy Wiggins convicted of manslaughter for 2021 stabbing of Kevin Smith. A 12-member jury in the Demerara High Court has found 29-year-old Randy Wiggins, a Mason, guilty of manslaughter for the 2021 fatal stabbing of Kevin Smith, a handyman from Sophia, Greater Georgetown. The verdict was delivered last Tuesday before Justice Joe and Barlow. Wiggins had been initially charged with murder but was acquitted of the murder charge and convicted of the lesser offense of manslaughter after the jury's deliberation. State Counsel Pranita Siraj, State Counsel Rabina Christmas, and State Counsel Mikel Puran represented the prosecution in the case, while Kiswana Jefford served as the defense attorney for Wiggins. Justice Barlow has scheduled the sentencing hearing for November 6, 2024. Until the sentencing, Wiggins will remain on remand. The case stems from a February 8, 2021, altercation between Wiggins and 36-year-old Kevin Smith at the Seafield Reserve Dam in Sophia. According to police reports, Smith was at home when the confrontation with Willings escalated. Armed with a knife, Willings stabbed Smith 3 times, once in the chest, once in the lower abdomen, and once above the left knee, before fleeing the scene. Emergency services arrived swiftly, but despite their efforts, Smith was pronounced dead shortly after the incident. Following the stabbing, Wiggins was apprehended and charged with murder. After a preliminary inquiry at the Sparendam Magistrates' Court, presided over by Magistrate Rochelle Liverpool, it was determined that there was enough evidence to commit Wiggins to stand trial in the High Court. The trial, which lasted several days, culminated in the jury's decision to convict Wiggins of manslaughter. Lenroy Michael Ford convicted of 2021 murder of Odingo Anthony Heywood. Big Smith News Watch reports. Lenroy Michael Ford, also known as Biggie, has been found guilty of the 2021 murder of Odingo Anthony Heywood following a trial in the Demerara High Court. The case, presided over by Justice Sandal Kissoon, began on October 14, 2024, and concluded with a unanimous guilty verdict on October 17, 2024. Ford was charged with fatally shooting Heywood on April 21, 2021, during a confrontation at the victim's home in Charlestown, Georgetown. The prosecution, led by State Counsel Alvaro Ramatar and State Counsel Delon Fraser, presented evidence that Ford went to Heywood's residence where a dispute escalated. During the altercation, Ford pulled out a gun and fired 10 shots, striking Heywood in the back. The victim, 25-year-old Heywood, was pronounced dead at the scene. The dispute reportedly stemmed from an unresolved conflict involving an alleged robbery connected to an acquaintance of Heywood. Despite the defense's efforts, led by attorney Glendon Greenidge of Greenidge and Associates, to establish Ford's innocence, the jury rejected the claims and found him guilty of murder. Following the murder, Ford evaded law enforcement for several days, prompting the issuance of a wanted bulletin. He was eventually captured while attempting to flee to Region 7 by boat. A woman accused of harboring Ford during this time was also detained by police. Justice Sandal Kissoon has scheduled Ford's sentencing for November 8, 2024, where he will face the penalty for the crime that deeply affected the Charlestown community. Oma Primo faces 13 fraud-related charges. Big Smith News Watch reports. The Anti-Fraud Unit of the Criminal Investigation Department, CID, will bring Oma Primo before the court today to answer 13 charges of collecting money by false pretense. The charges are in connection with multiple complaints lodged by at least 50 individuals. Primo, 36, a resident of Central Amelia's ward, Dindon, and the owner of Primo's import and taxi service, is accused of taking millions of dollars from customers, promising to deliver automobiles, but failing to do so. In many instances, she has reportedly refused to refund the money. On Wednesday, October 16, 2024, Primo was taken into custody following a new complaint by a young man who reported issues with a car purchase from Primo's imports and taxi service. The man alleged that despite making regular payments for the vehicle, it was repossessed by BM Sote Auto Sales and Rental, a larger dealership. Investigations revealed that Primo's business had been purchasing vehicles from larger dealerships and reselling them, often without the knowledge or consent of those dealerships. The police have indicated that more charges against Primo are likely to be filed by the end of next week. Authorities have urged anyone who has done business with Primo and is unable to obtain their promised goods to visit their nearest police station to file a report. Mark D'Oliveira acquitted of murder in 2021 stabbing of Kwal Dindon. Mark D'Oliveira, a 24-year-old resident of Kitty, Georgetown, was acquitted of murder on Tuesday after a jury found him not guilty in the 2021 fatal stabbing of 23-year-old Kwal Dindon. The verdict was delivered in the High Court of Demerara, following trial proceedings overseen by Justice Peter Hugh. D'Oliveira, also known as Buckboy, was represented by defense attorney Kiswana Jefford, while State Counsel Abiola Lowe led the prosecution. Throughout the trial, D'Oliveira maintained that he acted in self-defense during an altercation at a birthday party on Sandy Bab Street, Kitty, in June 2021. The incident that led to Dindon's death occurred during a birthday celebration attended by both men. According to police reports, an argument between Dindon, known as Coolie Boy, and D'Oliveira escalated into a physical altercation. Dindon allegedly pushed D'Oliveira to the ground and, along with his friends, pursued him with a piece of wood. During the confrontation, D'Oliveira reportedly drew a knife and stabbed Dindon in the back while attempting to defend himself. Dindon later collapsed in a nearby yard and died after undergoing emergency surgery at the Georgetown Public Hospital on June 21, 2021. Key evidence presented during the trial included D'Oliveira's caution statement, where he asserted that he was acting in self-defense. The defense argued that Dindon, who was allegedly armed and accompanied by friends, had attacked D'Oliveira, forcing him to protect himself. Justice Hugh concluded that the prosecution did not sufficiently establish the unlawfulness of D'Oliveira's actions. Consequently, the judge determined that there was insufficient evidence to require de Oliveira to present a defense. The jury was directed to return a formal not guilty verdict, leading to de Oliveira's acquittal. After spending over 2 years on remand, de Oliveira has now been released from custody and cleared of all charges related to the incident. SOCU reveals $500 million in bank accounts linked to Assistant Commissioner Brutus amid money laundering probe. News source Guyana reports, the Special Organized Crime Unit, SOCU, has unveiled a significant development in its money laundering investigation involving Assistant Commissioner of Police Kelvin Brutus, revealing that $500 million has been discovered in 9 bank accounts associated with Brutus, his wife, and their toddler son. The revelation comes as part of ongoing court proceedings following legal action initiated by Mr. Brutus against the government and the Guyana police force over the probe. In court documents submitted by SOCU head, Assistant Commissioner Fazil Karambaksh, the investigation reportedly centers around $800 million and 240 pending charges related to the Brutus family. The SOCU head indicated that 8 of the 9 accounts have been frozen by the court as part of the probe, while the remaining active account is the one through which Mr. Brutus receives his salary of 491,000 Guyanese dollars from the Guyana police force. Mr. Brutus remains on administrative leave during the investigation. The accounts under investigation include Kitus General Contracting and Holdings Incorporated, a company owned by Mr. Brutus, with one account holding over 56.6 million Guyanese dollars. South Quata Contracting and AAA Depot, 2 companies registered last year by Mrs. Odonica Alder, Mr. Brutus's wife, which collectively hold a balance of over 352 million Guyanese dollars. Accounts in the name of the toddler son, 2 accounts with a combined balance of just over 14 million Guyanese dollars. Additional accounts, 2 accounts each listed under the names of Mr. Brutus and his wife. The court documents also disclosed that one of the companies owned by Mrs. Brutus was used to supply goods to the Guyana Police Force and the Guyana Police Consumers Cooperative Society Limited. SOCA's investigation suggests that Mr. Brutus and his wife allegedly exploited his position as Assistant Commissioner to conduct illegal transactions through these companies. In June 2024, Mr. Brutus reportedly withdrew 63.7 million Guyanese dollars from his salary account, believed to be used for purchasing a property in Albertown. The property, bought for 85 million Guyanese dollars, formerly housed a bar that has since been demolished. SOCA's filings include signed statements from 2 businessmen claiming to have provided Mr. Brutus with monetary gifts, one amounting to $10,000 and another 1 million Guyanese dollars. The SOCU head asserts that the funds linked to Mr. Brutus and his family are suspected to be proceeds of crime, potentially in violation of the Anti-Money Laundering Act. Mr. Brutus has filed a constitutional motion in the High Court against the government, the police force, SOCU, and the Police Service Commission, contesting the ongoing money laundering probe. Meanwhile, the High Court has denied a request from Mr. Brutus and his wife for permission to leave the country for a medical trip to the United States. SOCU has reportedly recommended numerous charges related to the case but is awaiting advice from the Director of Public Prosecutions.